The Collective Whisper Podcast with Simon K.
Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the Collective Whisper Podcast with your host, Simon K. Thank you very much for joining us again this week, guys, and we hope you're looking forward to everything that life is going to bring you in the next few weeks, plus some great guests on this show. And before we get to the next guest, I'd just like to ask you, please follow and subscribe wherever you see the button, and please follow our show and share it with all your friends and neighbors. Okay, so our next guest this week is Sinead Dalton. Sinead Dalton is a TV and media producer. Sinead is currently working with DIY SOS, The Big Build for Motive TV. Sinead was also the assistant producer of The Elaine Show on Virgin Media One. Her work covered organising, producing and editing VTS, research and booking guests and new panelists, as well as coming up with creative new ideas for the show. Over the last few years, she produced and edited such pieces as Elementary Elaine, Talking Heads, Train with Elaine, and an annual Halloween project, which had been filmed locally and in Salem, Massachusetts. She previously worked with other media companies such as Spirit FM and as a news anchor for 98 FM and Spin 103.8. She has a 2.1 Masters in Journalism and Media Communication, which she received from Griffith College in 2014, and an honours degree in Theology and English Literature. She spent time abroad in Australia building her career working with the Kilda News in Melbourne. She has a 2.1 Masters in Journalism and Media Communication, which she received from Griffith College in 2014, and an honours degree in Theology and English Literature. She spent time abroad in Australia building her career working with the Kilda News in Melbourne. Okay, so welcome to the show, Sinead Dalton. How are you?
I am very good. How are you?
Good. It's lovely to talk to you. You're. What's the weather like where you are right now?
Oh, don't get me started. Now it's cold. It's nippy. The rain has stopped. Storm Barra had us going there last week, but no, it's calmed down a bit now. But I'd say there'll be a few around the corner before the winter's out now.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, it's, people said to me, oh, you're in Alicante, the weather must be much better. But it's mild here, but it's been quite, I don't want to say stormy, but very windy, because we kind of get the tail end of those. For example, when you had Arwen there a week or two ago, a few days later, we got the tail end of it.
The tail end of it, you poor thing.
The poor thing. The tail end
terrible.
Of it. Yeah. Oh, it's terrible, yeah. And it's funny, I do say sometimes now, oh, it's cold. And I'm thinking, when I say it, I'm thinking, if I was at home now in Ireland now, I'd be like thinking, it's not cold.
No, you're not allowed to say that anymore. You're not allowed. Okay.
No.
If you've Alicante in your address, not allowed.
Exactly. Yeah. So tell me, Sinead, obviously, you're pretty busy at the moment. I know you're working on the DIY SOS, the big build and all that. Is that still going ahead? Because it's like, that's kind of a series, so that's continuously moving, isn't it?
Yeah, so we've actually come to the end. So series 2 has been wrapped up, so it's gone to the edit now, and we finished that up last Friday. So our final one this of the season was held down in Waterford for mum of 2, Laura Sheridan, and her 3 kids. So beautiful stories along the way. They're definitely one to watch out for in the coming months.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great idea, and I mean, the whole setup and people helping out and just the whole team process, I can imagine working in that kind of environment is really nice too, no?
Yeah, it's very different from what I've been doing over the last couple of years. And then it's really like hands-on and great, like chatting to people. And I tell you, I could actually probably give it a go at building a house after it. Now, I'm not saying it would stand up or it would have a roof, but I do know now a lot of kind of more technical terms, which my dad would be proud of when it comes to building. But apart from that, no, it was really like, it was so good to get involved with it. It really made me kind of realize how generous people are and how, you know, us as an Irish nation, when something's happening and we call out for it. Because initially when I jumped on board, it was like, okay, well, you're going to have to contact people. And the whole concept is that people give either their free time or they give free products, or everything pretty much is on the basis of free items. And so you have to kind of ring them and get them involved and stuff. So you can imagine if I ring you and ask for something for free, like it's a tough thing, and I was slightly kind of dreading that initially, but I actually could not get over the generosity of people. And and this is not after like a full conversation of a phone of trying to persuade somebody. This literally was, yeah, no worries, would love to get involved, brilliant, not a bother. I just couldn't, like, I was overwhelmed and shocked. Well, not shocked is probably the wrong word, but just like I was really proud to kind of say that, oh my god, these people are just giving their free time, giving their, parts of their business that would cost them a lot. And at a time we haven't had it easy. COVID has been so tough, especially for small businesses and that kind of thing, but was no hesitation at all. And that kind of really made me, God, kind of step back and go, God, fair play. Like it was really, really good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really nice.
Well, I mean, I'm always like, when I see these things, because I used to previously work as a carpenter for years in Ireland. And so I know the whole building game, and I know how tough it can be to get projects done. And I was laughing, actually, I think it was today or yesterday, I saw one of your posts and you were looking for, or maybe it was an older one, but you were looking for tradespeople and so on. And I was thinking to myself, that's probably very different, like, to when you were working on, the Elaine Show and these other projects, because it's a different type of production. You're more like a project manager, aren't you?
Yeah, well, listen, it's a totally different genre category, kind of. Like with Elaine, it was more kind of personal things, and you know, my boyfriend's cheating on me. What do I do in comparison to, you're dealing with real life stories here, and even like, and I found even within the build, you'd get immersed in your job, you'd get immersed in what you're doing and getting things together. And then all of a sudden you'd read back the individual stories again, and it would be like you'd remember why you're doing this. And the kind of, I remember when I jumped on board, the girls gave me one or two to have a quick look at again, just to jog my memory on the kind of whole, formation of the show and that kind of thing. And I was in tears. I was in absolute tears watching them, but tears in a good way, because it was just so lovely. Like, these people that you get a chance to help, and by coming together, and all these different trades coming together and doing a small bit of what they can do, say, like you said, carpentry, and then there's plumbers and builders, and it can make such a big difference to the lives of these people. And it just kind of brings you back to reality as well, kind of reminds you of what you have in your life, and being thankful, kind of corny as that might sound, it does remind you of what you have in your life, and kind of to be grateful for that, which is great.
Yeah, and the thing is, I can imagine, for people like yourself, producers working in, different studios and working with different people, you have a set way of working, and you know how to deal with these people and presenters and so on. But then when you kind of switch tack and you're like out on the site and you're kind of working with tradespeople, it's a different part of society, and you're kind of maybe seeing, I don't want to say it in a bad way, but you're seeing people who are maybe more genuine in that way, and you're seeing real life stories rather than my boyfriend's cheating on me and these kind of stories that are for entertainment. You're seeing things that actually make a difference to society and the people who are the real heroes in the background, aren't you?
Yeah, you are. I don't say, well, like, I don't know whether you can, like, it's just, they're so different, the two of them. And I mean, okay, while that is more of a hands-on project, the DIY one, and people getting involved, Elaine Show in itself was actually comforting to people as well. So you would answer questions, or you would talk about topics that might actually relate to the person sitting on the couch. So, you could have, Joanne Smith sitting there listening to a topic of how a woman didn't know what to do because she'd two kids, and she didn't know how to deal with it, and her partner was cheating, or something on the lines of that. And getting the advice of women who've either been through it, who have either done it, or just general girls and the guys, because we did have the boys on the Friday, was a helping hand in just a different way for them. So I suppose it's just different in
Yeah,
a way.
and a
It's just
different
different.
demographic too, probably.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, you'd be surprised. Like, I mean, DIY SOS would reach out to a lot of people, but as did Elaine. Like, it's kind of, you'd have the boys who wouldn't admit they watch it, but if it's on in the background there, oh sure, what's going on there? Like, but yeah, it was good. It was good.
Yeah, I think you'll find that with daytime or morning television, it's something guys kind of, they're flittering through the channels, and then there'll be something on, and then, there could be a woman on a chat show talking about or Loose Women or one of these kind of shows, and they'll start watching, and maybe they'll be on their own, they'll be watching. If someone else comes in, they'll turn it over, I wasn't watching that, and that kind of stuff, you know what I mean?
The lads in DIY would have been like, oh, so what did you work on before? And I'd be like, such and such and such and such. And I'd be like, oh, no, I wouldn't have been around for that. I'd be like, yeah, sure. So, actually, look, each to their own, whatever you're into,
Yeah, exactly. So let's go back a little bit, obviously, because tell us about you growing up kind of as a child and stuff. You tell us about, were you in a big family or a small family?
No, I was so the family consists of my brother and my sister and my mum and my dad, but my dad passed away when I was 16. So that was tough. And yeah, no, I was pretty good. I was into sport big time, played a lot of basketball, GAA, which I'm still obsessed with today. Big into music, big into, gigs, concert bands, that kind of thing. And yeah, in school I was good. I wasn't a class clown or anything. I was head girl when I was in sixth year, which I was proud of. Very proud of. And yeah, I was a normal enough teenager, I think. I was obsessed with, though, and I still am, paranormal stuff and ghosts and all that kind of stuff. So, and I still am. So, yeah, so.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, because we all have these little things we love, or, I love that as well. I love kind of mystery stuff. Paranormal, I dabble in it, but then I'm watching, I'm like, that's not real. No, that's put on, or it's a TV show. But
no, I'm a big horror girl.
Yeah. Well, I love horror. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I love horror. That's one of my favorite genres. But what I don't like are these kind of haunted ghost shows, because I find them very fabricated. I like mystery shows, where they're trying to find answers and supernatural stuff. But when I feel like, oh no, this is too prefabricated and it's too put on, and you just don't know if you can believe it or not.
Well, it's funny because one of the lads that I worked with in Virgin Media worked for a very popular one in the UK. I won't mention the name, and said that it was all fake, and absolutely, my dreams were gutted. But to this day, I don't believe him. So,
well, actually, last season we had one of Paranormal Supernatural Ireland, one of the guys on. We had a podcast episode, and he debunked a lot of stuff there, like about ghosts coming out at night and only nighttime and so on. And he was talking about those shows as well. Now, I won't give away too much, but it's quite interesting when you see people who work in that field and the things they see on television that are merely for entertainment.
Well, I'm actually the group that you mentioned. I'm actually in the equivalent to that one here as well, in Paranormal Researchers Ireland. So we run Loftus Hall, and we do lockdowns, and we're going to actually Spike Island in February.
Very good. That's really interesting.
So yeah, that's going to be a very, very, it's a very secluded island, which no way to get off it. The girls have done it before, and some strange things have happened, so watch out for that.
Yeah, and it's like what he said when he was on the show, it's a lot of energy and so on, but I suppose nobody really has the answers. But I think what in that kind of things, what you're doing, you're actually going there and you're living it. But I think when there's more TV cameras and more producers and directors around, and it is a big show on TV, sometimes if nothing's happening, they have to create it. So unfortunately, what you're doing is more real than what they'll ever do in 3 seasons.
Depends on the producer, it depends on the ethics and morals of the producer, depending on what they're trying to get. If they're kind of like searching for things that are real, yeah, I won't go any further.
Yeah. No, exactly. Can I go back there, because I actually saw a lovely post you had. I think it was on Facebook, whatever. I saw, for for your dad. So when your dad died when you were 16, I saw you had a post, and it was really nice because you were saying, it's been so long, and I hope you're proud of me and everything, and that was lovely. So for you, losing your dad at 16 was very difficult, because it's that kind of age when you're just becoming a woman, and you're still need that role model there, and it's a big loss in your life. So did that really impact on your life a lot?
Yeah, I think it did. Like, I mean, I really, I think when it happened, I don't think I kind of, like, to me, I was only a couple of days into fifth year in secondary school, and I came home and it had happened. It was completely out of the blue. And it, to me, it was like, well, actually, I have my leaving cert to do, so I have to throw myself into it. And as time progressed, I think, as things happened, as things do, as you grow up and you experience life, it was more when, say I broke up with somebody or something like that, that's when it would kind of regurgitate, or it would kind of come back, because I'd never really kind of fully dealt with it, I don't think. But I think, it's, yeah, like, it's tough when events happen, like, so when I graduated, or even as I got to an age of where I could go down and have a pint. Like, I always say now, I would love to have had a go, ring my dad and say, come on, go down for a pint, because I'm that type of girl. Do you know what I mean? I'm not really, really girly, but I'd be like, come on, we go for a pint, like a Guinness, like, because I drink a pint of Guinness. Do you know what I mean? I'm getting married in May, and that's going to kill me, the fact that, like, he's not there to walk me down the aisle. So, but I think, through doing the paranormal stuff, and things that have happened, I think, over the years, have kind of made me realize he is always there with me. So there is that form of peace of mind there as well. So I don't know, everybody deals with it differently. And I think I did find myself quite lost for a while on what I wanted to do. Because, I had a sister who was in the medical field. I had a brother he's a presenter on Virgin Media, sports presenter now, and he's in media. And I kind of was like, what am I? I even to this day, I still don't sometimes know what I'm supposed to do, or what, it's that typical question that you asked when, what are you going to do when you grow up? No idea. I always wanted to be one of those people that was like, yes, I want to be a doctor. I want to be set in stone of what I want, but that was never for me. So to bring it back to, yeah, it is. It was tough, and it still is tough when things crop up and events happen. But look, it is what it is. You just go with it.
Yeah, and as you said, those kind of momentous occasions in your life, like weddings and graduations and stuff, that's the most difficult, because you when you were younger and you were thinking of those future dates, you kind of always envisioned those important people being there. And now that they're not, it's difficult. But like you said, you just have to move on. And obviously, one thing I'm wondering is then, when you were doing your leaving cert, and I don't know if you had applied for college and so on, do you think it changed then what you wanted to do with your life? Like, was that one of those things where you said, no, I'm going to remain focused, or did you stop and say, look, let's reevaluate?
It's funny because, like, I'd say through that period, I was very kind of focused on getting into college. What it was I was going to do in college, I don't know. So, I was getting advice from left, right, and center, and I kind of was like, right, okay, actually, yeah, I'd like that. I was going to go for social care, and I was going to go for psych nursing, because my sister had kind of done that, and I was thinking, oh yeah, I think I'd be good at that. And then I think it was the change of mind in July, which you can change. The first one's February, and then July is your last chance to really kind of make up your mind. And I think I had gone to a Take That concert 2 days beforehand. I was like, what are we doing? I have no interest in social care or social work. That's just so not me. And I dropped it all and I put arts. So literally, if Gary Barlow or any of them are looking, you have been my inspiration for getting into media. Well, I picked arts anyway, and then as that followed on, I kind of I found it tough because I missed it by 10 points when I got my results, and I took that as like I had to do a PLC course, and I found that really tough because all my friends were going to like UCD and Trinity and all that, and I had to do a PLC course. And there's nothing wrong with PLC courses at all, but I just felt for myself that it probably just was all coming together again. You know, like I had all of a sudden in my head, I was geared on doing my leaving cert. And it's tough because you're in a routine where you're from first year, you know, next year you're going to be in second year, next year you're going to be in third year. And then all of a sudden you don't know where you are, and you don't know what you're doing, and you're kind of at 17 by the way, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? I don't know. So I ended up the following year going to All Hallows to do a theology and English degree, because I actually had kind of changed it a bit as well. I was going to teach. And so, yeah, so I did 4 years there. So, and then I had another kind of life significant change after that. I was going to go over to England with my partner and get the H-dip and then head to Australia. And we broke up after 5 years, which was very, very tough. And I just said, no, feck this, I'm going to Australia. So I packed up literally the day after I graduated. I headed to Oz on my own.
Wow. Yeah. So you took a time out.
I had to. My brain was fried after my degree. I was, frazzled. Yeah.
Well, I can imagine, you know, you were doing theology and English literature, that kind of stuff. So it's a very deep and heavy course anyway. So after 4 years of it, you know, you probably come out a lot wiser. But at the same time, you're thinking, I just need a bit of simple life now, or a bit of fun.
I needed a bit of fun, and it was the best 2 years of my life, and I could just recommend it to anybody. If you can get a chance to do it in your life, just pack up and go. And the best thing to do it, as scary as it does sound, is to do it on your own. You don't have anybody to answer to. You don't have, you know, if you go out and make a fool of yourself in the bar one night, so what? You're probably never going to see those people again. Who cares? And you'll find out who you are.
They'll have you'll go back there and they'll be like, we have the plaque on the wall where you went crazy that night.
Do you remember that? Yeah, do you remember that? We remember you.
And you'll be like, I didn't even know I was in this town. So did you, when you were in Australia, did you tour around, or how long did you stay for entirely then?
Yeah, so I went to Sydney. I started off in Sydney, and then in order to get your second year, you need to, because actually originally I was never coming home. I didn't want to come home because me and my dad had gone to Australia. My dad had lived in Australia when he was younger, and I had gone with him when I was young as well. So I had always kind of that taste for Australia. So I was never coming home. And I started in Sydney. And then, as I said, to get your second year, you have to do regional work, which is, you know, can be farm work or that kind of thing, or in the mines, that kind of thing. So I kind of got away with it. I did teaching. So I was teaching in the outback. And this is how like far away it was. I was an hour flight from Sydney. I was 19 hours on a bus, and I was then a further 2.5 hours out by car. So think of the middle of nowhere and then multiply that by 100. Like literally from here to the TV, which is nothing, over in my sitting room, there'd be a kangaroo with by you. Like it was amazing. It was so isolating. And desolate in somewhat way. But yeah, surreal, exactly. And yeah, so that was cool. And what I would do is there's boys in the town, and when they get to secondary school level, they either go to boarding school or they do it over the internet. So I would help them do schooling each day. They would log in, and so you'd have your kids, you know, from Northern Australia, Southern Territory, Northern Territory, and they'd all log into your classroom. So I would do maths and science and stuff with them. So I did that for 3 months, and then I traveled the coast, and then I lived in Melbourne for the remainder of what was 2 years. So that was just the best. So good. So good. I still have friends, and I played football as well over there. That's actually how I met most of my friends, was through the football. So yeah.
That kind of experience helps you grow up as well, because a lot of people, I think, when they're stuck in Ireland or England or wherever they live from, they feel like they're grown up, but then they go abroad and it opens their mind and they see how other people live, and then when they come back they like say, wow, I am a different person from that whole trip, and now I'm an adult.
Yeah, it kind of brings you that extra stuff. I know, look, each person is different, and some people, they don't need to do those trips. But I was at the stage in my life, I think as well, I was sick of Ireland, and it actually, made me appreciate Ireland when I came back. Like, I remember flying in, I was coming home, I was so excited to come home, and we flew in over the Liffey, and I could see the SIP2 building, and I could see the Liffey. It was a perfect clear day, and I just got so excited about Dublin City. It was fab. It was really, really cool. So yeah, each to their own, but yeah, it was great. Yeah, it was
it's
really,
nice.
really
I mean,
good.
it's always nice wherever you are when you're coming home, even if it's only for a weekend or if it's, for good. It's lovely when you're flying in and you see this little patch of land and that's your country, and you're like, oh, because it gives you that feeling, doesn't it?
But I think I had to go away in order to appreciate
Yeah,
what was.
exactly, yeah.
And what is kind of, and still to this day, I kind of do still appreciate it. But like I said, you had to kind of go away to come back to remember what you had.
So when you were in Australia and Melbourne, you worked with St. Kilda News, and so how was that? Because as you said, you had done the theology and the English lit, and then obviously your mind was kind of going towards the arts and towards media and that stuff. So how did you manage to wander into their offices, or how did you get that gig?
I remember just kind of, again, in that mindset of what am I doing with my life, and kind of slightly panicking as well, because I was getting a bit older, and I didn't want to, I didn't want to not, I wasn't 18 either anymore, so I was like kind of had to kind of make decisions. And so I decided, right, I was like, I'll get a bit of experience with something local. And so I just went online one day and Googled a load of kind of local papers around. And I got on to St. Kilda, and they got back to me. And I met up with the main editor, and just had a chat. And yeah, I just, from then on, started, like, I was working in the pub in PJ O'Brien's on the Yarra. And that was at my time, and we'd great crack and great fun then. And then I would spend my other time kind of doing different articles and interviews and different events and stuff around St. Kilda. So, because it wasn't too far from where I lived, it was about 10 minutes on tram from where I lived. So yeah, it was that's how that began, and I did a good few articles. So yeah.
Yeah, because I saw there, obviously you were doing, music and, you then prostitution and all kinds of stories. So it must have been quite interesting. And did you feel like it's something you could have, if you had decided to stay there, do you feel like it's something you could have continued doing?
I would have liked to, but the difficulty with staying the is not the kind of job that you decide to pick. It's whether or not you can get sponsorship, and that is a big thing over there, because it costs a lot of money, unfortunately. And so a business has to decide whether or not they want to sponsor you, and then they also have to put their trust in you to whether or not you're going to stay. So, like, they could pay all this money out, and then you get your citizenship or your your Aussie passport, and then you decide to go home, and sure, then they've spent all this money. So sponsorship was very hard to come by, depending on what type of career you were in. And so unfortunately it just didn't work out that way. But look, as I say, like what's for you won't pass you by, kind of
Yeah,
thing,
I
you
mean,
know.
it all things come to an end, and you move on to the next thing. So when you came back to Ireland, then, and you wanted to obviously do a master's in journalism and so on.
Hmm.
So did that kind of help make up your mind, the fact you'd worked a little in media in Australia, and you thought, okay, this is what I want to do? I mean, I've gone to take that concert. Gary and the boys have convinced me, but there was a
Oh
seed
God.
planted already, wasn't there?
Yeah, like, well, even it was there before I grew up. Like, I've always been mad into music. I've always been like obsessed with music. Always known the lyrics of songs. Always up to date with everything that was in the charts and showbiz and all that kind of stuff. But I also had a kind of in depth um curiosity with news and current affairs as well. So I had a good mix of both and a good interest in both. And yeah, so that kind of helped. But I had applied for Griffith College before I left, so I had actually been accepted while I was in Australia. So that kind of was like, right, okay, you're starting in September.
Okay, so
This is,
something to rush back for.
yeah, well, that's it. I think, but you see, I think that was as well from speaking to people who had gone home before me. They were like, make sure you've something organized for when you get back, because the novelty wears off after a while when you've come home, and then you're kind of like, why did I come home? So the fact that I had something lined up actually kind of helped the kind of progress of going back into Irish society as such a bit easier. So
Yeah. And when you were there, then there's always that question, I suppose, that producers get asked. Was there a choice between working in front of the camera or behind the camera? Because obviously, when you're working in media, you can go down different roads. You can be a host, or I'm not saying you can be, but you might have that kind of ambition. But then some people are like, no, I don't want to be in front of a camera. I want to organize and be a project manager or producer. So for you, did you have to think about exactly what you wanted to do, or did it kind of happen in a natural way?
originally, I was going for news. I wanted to be a reporter. I was originally going kind of down that route, and I had a good voice. And I did do news for 98 FM and Spin as well over time and Spirit. But I think it made me realize, and this is if for anybody who wants, any kind of young people who want to go down that path, you really have to start news and current affairs very early. So, like, if you're 16, get your experience in your local radio station. I think if I had started, and if I had been a bit more clear in what I wanted in my own head, um, a little earlier, I think it would have fallen into place a bit easier for me. I did find it very difficult, and I do suffer from anxiety, which I only kind of found out through the process of it all. My anxiety got very, very bad. Um, and I had to kind of deal with that as well. So, kind of, and as well, when you're working from a freelance, excuse me, a freelance position, it can be, and a lot of my friends say this as well, it's tough because you're afraid sometimes to say no to anything. So you won't say no, and then you'll find yourself working straight for 28 days and you've nearly killed yourself. So it's kind of it's a tough game, but like I said, the earlier you start in for that kind of genre, like your news or current affairs, you would want to be a little bit earlier. So that kind of made me realize, and then I kind of started dipping my toe in other areas, so like producing and kind of content wise and putting things together and editing and that kind of thing. And I found that was more my role, and that was more suited to my personality and my creativity. um, but it's good that I actually can do news and current affairs, but my creative side is much more advanced than that would be, if that makes sense. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, because that's the thing, isn't it? Because obviously, with any kind of show, whether it be a radio show or a TV show, you have the presenters, and some of them are producers as well, obviously. But the real kind of bones of the show is in the production and the direction of the show, making sure everything is there so the show can go forward, scheduling the guests. There's so much behind the scenes work that people don't really take or account of, isn't there?
Oh, completely. Like, I mean, it's so funny when you look at a show which is an hour long, you've no idea the in-depth work that goes in behind that and the planning that goes into it. And I think, and that's one thing I found that I actually ended up really loving, is the organization, the planning. I love that. I love looking at, right, what can we do, how we can make this appealing, what can we get, how can we make it stand out, and then what do we need to do in order to get that all together and put it together and tick things off lists. And I love organizing that kind of stuff and having it to a T, to timing, and that kind of thing. So I'm a bit kind of pedantic when it comes to organizational skills and that kind of thing,
making sure everything is in the right box and so on. Yeah.
Definitely. Even if it's a little to the left and should be in the middle, that'll drive me nuts.
Yeah. And did you find as well, because when you were working with, 98 FM and Spain, once you started getting into production on that side, then going from radio production to TV production, was that a big jump or was it very different for you?
No, I was doing it all at the same time. So I was doing news at the time as well as doing kind of the radio at the weekend.
All right. Okay.
So I was the assistant producer on news and I was doing 98 FM and Spin during the weekend. So then I got offered a contract with assistant producer for the Elaine Show, and I just said, yeah, like contracts don't come by very, very often. I would be silly at my stage of life in what I wanted to do with my life and where I was going with my life to turn it down. So I took it, and yeah.
Okay. And, nowadays when you see lots of TV shows, it's kind of, I put this analogy forward, kind of like, it's like you see, for example, when a song comes out at the moment, and in the past, there'd be one or two songwriters, but now there's like 7, they go to pick up the Grammy for best song and there's like 8 songwriters on stage. But it's kind of a bit like that with TV now. You see, producer, executive producer. Like I was watching a thing the other night and there was so many producers on it and executive producers. And then of course you get the stars of the show or the film who are executive producers as well. So when you're working on TV specifically, when they are kind of saying who has this role and who has that role, how do you kind of divvy that out? Like you're saying, well, he's the boss, he's the executive producer, and someone says, well, I want to be a producer as well. How do you make sure that there's not too many chefs in the kitchen?
I think it's important, unfortunately, to have an even balance is not always going to happen. And you're not just dealing with people, you're dealing with different personalities, you're dealing with egos, you're dealing with, demands from higher people. So a lot of the time it can be hard to find an equal balance. But I think, and this is always I say when you're producing, the most important thing that you can start off with is a really good kind of rapport with you and your team. Let them know, no matter whether they're a researcher or a producer or an exec producer, if they have an idea, put it out on the table. Don't be afraid to talk. Don't be thinking anything is, any of your ideas sound stupid, or that just because you have a title that, you can't put an idea forward or offer to do something. Like, obviously titles are there for a reason due to experience and all that, but it doesn't mean that you cannot either show your skills or show your creativity or muck, like on DIY, I was assistant producer on DIY, but my location manager, which is a totally different job, needed help. I went out and got stuck in with her. She needed, stuff to be dropped off in a van. I did that as well. It's all about working together. And I think, okay, yes, you have a title, but I think everybody should kind of, when you're working on a team, step outside that title. And one, if you're a researcher, go and like I said, location manager, give them a hand. You'll always pick up something. You'll always be seen then as well as somebody who's not just like, well, my position is this and I only do this. You don't. In media, as I say, it's not a 9-to-5 job and it's not a set title. You might do things that are under your title and that are associated with your title, but it doesn't mean that you can't step outside that, give other people a hand, as well as bring your own creativity. You know, as they say, two minds are better than one, and that relates to everything, whether it's location managing, assistant producer, director. Don't be afraid to kind of step outside your title and give more if you feel that you have it.
Yeah. Well, I kind of take it in the sense that if you're doing it as one person, you have to do everything. So the fact is, for a lot of people, maybe they haven't done it as one person, but you'll see the other people who have, for example, who worked one time as a location manager or worked one time as a runner or whatever, and they'll be willing to, when it comes down to it, say, yeah, I can help you with that. I have experience in that. But even if I don't, I'm willing to help. And that's what makes a good team, isn't it?
It is, definitely. I mean, if you decide you want to get into media and you have determination and drive, you're halfway there. If there's one thing that I feel I cannot stand when I'm working on a project is people who I'd hate to call it being lazy, but just kind of that you have to put a fire under them. Like, you know, you want to be here, you applied for this position, then give it 100%. That means thinking outside the box. That means thinking ahead of the game. And I know it kind of might sound all slightly cliche. It might be like, oh, but that is how you progress. It's being 2 steps ahead of what's going on.
And preempting stuff.
Preempting, exactly. Because that's how it's like one of the interviews I got for the Elaine Show. It was Married at First Sight in Australia was being played over here. Now it was, I think we were behind them in broadcasting, but it was massive over here. And the girl who was the absolute evil character in it, the final was on that night. And I just went on and I just was like, found her email. And I said, sure, I'll give it a go and try, and got her. And I got an exclusive for the show and the only one in the country after the finale, which completely revolved around her. Now, if I hadn't tried or if I didn't bother, wouldn't have got it. So you have to have that kind of drive and kind of passion for wanting to, and kind of, I would say, competitiveness to a certain extent, to want to get the best, do the best, and get the best for whatever you're working on. So,
well, I mean, it is. It was funny. I was talking to somebody a few weeks ago, and they said we were talking, and I know him for a few months or whatever, and he said to me, I said, I have to go home. I'm working on my podcast, and he said, oh, you have a podcast? And he said, yeah, and he said, and who do you interview? And I said, well, you know, interesting people. I said, you know, sometimes celebrities, singers, whatever, just people with stories. And he said, how do you get them? And I said, well, I contact them. And he said, yeah, but he was looking at, I could see his face, and what he was trying to say was like, yeah, but who are you? Like, why would they talk to you? This is what his face was telling me. So I said to him, I said, look, it doesn't matter. I said, you know, this is the great thing about the internet and phone calls and everything now. You can contact people, and fair enough, when you start out in the beginning and you're not as well known, it's harder to get those interviews. But then you just keep trotting along and kind of saying, this is what's happening, and then you're interested. And, you know, sometimes with celebrities, it's kind of, it can be a little bit shallow, and they're kind of curious about who else has been on your show and this kind of stuff. But that's par for the course. But the thing about it is, like you said there, you have to have the balls. You have to say, listen, hi, I'm reaching out. Is there any chance, whatever? And they might say no, and you'd say, I'll come back to you in a few weeks. So I think, like being a producer, you have to have those balls. You have to be able to say, look, I'm going to take a chance on this married with life thing. Maybe our married at first sight or whatever. It mightn't work out, but it could work out brilliantly.
It has. And I've had so many incidents like that where I've gotten unbelievable guests at the drop of a hat because I've just said, sure, give it a go and see if they answer. Do you know, and I have, like, I did a whole series on Elaine of throwback, Throwback Tuesdays, where I ended up getting, and I got some amazing, I got Chesney Hawkes, I got, 2 Unlimited, I got Atomic Kitten, like, I got Kim Wilde, and it was just literally I had built relationships with people, and as well as that, your rapport helps as well, how you deal with it. Like if you go in, being too serious, and it's off-putting, but like they say, if you don't try, you don't know. So if you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah, no, you have to try, and sometimes it's how you send that message, whatever. So I remember they were ignoring my messages completely, and I said, look, I'm really persistent. I'm not going to bother you, but I don't want to give up. And then they replied, and so sometimes that little
Was that
bit of
me by any
no,
chance?
it wasn't, no. Sometimes a little bit of desperation works. You have to try everything, don't you? Wasn't you? Don't worry.
Yeah. I will say though, the Irish charm does help. We do have a knack for definitely, and I did find that when I was in Australia, or whatever way that we come across is very I don't know what the word is. It's very kind of persuasive, and it's very appealing to people. So
we all have a little bit of Mrs. Doyle in us. You will.
you will. Yeah, you will, exactly. Yeah, just maybe not the look.
Not the look. Yeah. No, I think that's it. Yeah, but I think no matter where you're from, working in any kind of media thing where you're trying to get guests or you're trying to get stuff for the show, you have to learn to be more persuasive, because obviously you're never going to progress or never going to get further. For you, when you then so you were in Virgin, or that was TV3 at the time, so wasn't it?
Yeah, and it changed over to Virgin, so I was actually I was in the company when it changed.
Yeah. So tell us about that, because I always wondered, when TV3, who were like in big competition with RT and everything, but then obviously when Virgin come in, did things change dramatically, or was it just the name?
It wasn't. I think they had a more modern outlook to kind of programs and kind of mixing things up, which was good, and kind of again getting the best that can be. So I think they were willing to think a bit more outside the box when it came to content. And trying to appeal to the Irish audience, both of every age bracket, which was good. So yeah, like I think there was a bit of a change. There was kind of, I suppose, a modern twist with Virgin Media brought with it, as it changed over from purple to red.
Yes, and the other thing was as well, I remember, even being in Spain here, but let's say having the Irish channels, and it was really interesting because you would put on ITV, and whatever program was on ITV was usually on TV3 in the evening. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we did have some links there with them, obviously.
But that was so there was that kind of a thing. It wasn't so much during the daytime, but in the evening there was lots of similar programming and the channels. But obviously then with Virgin that changed a little bit then, and it kind of made TV3 into a different animal, didn't it?
Yeah, well, I suppose you also have to remember that we're not state funded like RTE. We don't have the funds that they have to put into projects. So now, don't get me wrong, some of the ones that came out from Virgin are like fantastic to watch. But unfortunately, it can come down to the money. Unfortunately, the green sign, So, but I think I absolutely loved working for them, and the relationships that were formed, and the work ethic, and like I said before, it was a great place to kind of. If you said you could go in and do something and you wanted to do something, they would let you do it, and they would let you show your skills, or which was great. So it was really, really good. So yeah, that's how I upskilled a good bit.
So the thing is then obviously working on, daytime programming, and you have a lot of competition obviously with the British shows, Loose Women, and, Good Morning, or not Good Morning, but Morning AM, and all like Morning AM, the TV3, but all the English shows. So was that something that you think that Irish TV improved on over the years, that we managed to kind of have a smaller population, smaller audience than the British, but probably for years we were lagging behind a bit with the morning TV and so on. Do you think it's something then that really changed?
Well, no, I think I wouldn't use the morning TV as an example because, like, in fairness, TV3, i.e. Virgin Media, have the only real breakfast show in the country. And it's a great show, and it's a great 3-hour slot to publicize things, to get really good messages out there, as well as having fun. It really kind of covers a wide range of different topics and different scenarios and that kind of thing, and really good presenters and really good personalities. And it has actually become a kind of I don't know what you call it, institute really in Ireland, that morning show. So it's ingrained within Irish people that the breakfast show of Ireland is Ireland AM, which belongs to Virgin and not RTE, which is really good. So, but I do think kind of, again, like I said, it all just boils down to money and the availability of what is available to you. And that's why I'm saying, coming back to as a producer in Ireland, that can put a lot of barriers up for you. And in order to not get tired out by that, you have to have that drive and that passion for it, because you will hit a lot of walls along the way. And you cannot let that stop you from producing something that's really good or putting something together that's really good. You have to work with what you have. You know, you don't have the budgets that are in the UK. You don't have access to a lot of celebrities and that kind of thing at your fingertips, or money at your fingertips. So you have to work with what you have. But I think we do a really, really good job in what we have. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I can imagine, obviously, you know, in TV3 and Virgin and RT, all of these, when there are good producers, that talent pool, I imagine, is poached a little from the UK as well, no?
I think, you know, from listening to friends, and obviously my brother worked in the UK with sports TV stations for 12 years, it's a very different ball game. And I was tempted to go to the UK myself, but I actually don't think I would have liked it. I think from what I've heard, it's a lot colder. And I think the Irish production and the Irish kind of relationships you make here and friendships you make are just a lot nicer. And, you know, it's I'm not saying it's easier. It's not easier. Media is very hard to get into and very, you know, it's a tough, cutthroat business. But in the UK, you've a lot more competition and it's a lot worse. So I would say stick to the Irish side.
Stick to these shores, yeah. Because it's funny, actually. You know, I know me and my wife were watching recently that show on Apple TV, you know, with Jennifer Aniston, the Good Morning Show, and I mean, it was quite entertaining. But I know it's probably a little far fetched and exaggerated, but it just shows you as well. You know, you have a big team, and the bigger the show is and the more the ratings count, it can be quite ruthless and quite cutthroat. And obviously the stars of the show, you know, their lives can't be very private for a lot of their lives, and you know, they can't fart or sneeze without the papers catching wind of it, excuse the pun. And but the thing is, that show really showed kind of things that we wouldn't normally see too, didn't it?
Like, I mean, every, you know, presenters have shelf lives. We have shelf lives as well, you know, and it's an industry where, you know, you're appealing to the public, you're appealing to people, and to, you know, there's only very seldom that you'll get a gay burn, very seldom that you'll get a, you know, Terry Wogan, you know, people who will last generations on TV. And, you know, as well, it depends on the decade as well. Like I said, Gay Byrne brought in things, approached topics when things were hot, and, you know, you wouldn't even touch. You know, we'll talk about the night dress incident one, you know, the typical late show. And but as well as that, what's changed, I think, as well, is that everybody wants that 15 minutes of fame. They want that. And then they want it's an addictive. So like when the likes of Gay Byrne would have began, or Terry Wogan, it was few and far between, and people weren't people didn't have the opportunities that they have nowadays. Now so many people want to get into the media that there's more choice, and so that there's a bigger turnover. So there's not as many memorable characters or presenters that, like, there's a few that come to mind now with me, but like I said, they have shelf lives, and unfortunately it's a rollover. But that's just the sign of the times, really.
Yeah. Well, I mean, everything, when you look at, reality TV and the winners of a lot of these Love Islands and, celebrity, or not even celebrity, but, Stuck in the Jungle and all of these shows, you kind of know that these people are using them as stepping stones to something else. And there's levels, because I always say, the winners maybe you'll see on some morning show or some afternoon show or something. And then further down the line, they might be on these, late night gambling shows, or, the spinning the roulette wheel.
Yeah.
So there's different levels, shopping channels, exactly. So now though, we have a bigger pool, and I won't say a talent pool, because we have a bigger pool with less talent. And all of those people, maybe 1 out of every 100 of those, new presenters, you might get someone who's really good.
Yeah, but like, I mean, yeah, that's true. That is very true. But then again, at the same time, look, if that's what they want to go for and they want to do that, go for it. Like, but have it at the back of your mind that there are two possible ways that this can go. You can go left or right, and I mean, you have to be strong enough to, if you're going to put yourself in that position, you have to be strong enough to deal with the repercussions and the possibility of, like, because we've so much more access as well to people now through social media and your Twitter and your Instagram and Facebook, that it can have huge effects on that person. Like, if you look at the likes of Caroline Flack, fantastic presenter, beautiful girl, and unfortunately, was hounded by people online, and it affected her. And like, for such, it still gets me to this day, because to think that she was in that mindset and couldn't reach out for help, and this was all done because of the path she decided to kind of go down and the direction that other people decided to take on her. You have to be such a strong person. And I'm not saying she wasn't a strong person, she was, but everybody has their limits and everybody has a breaking point. And unfortunately, just even talking about it, and unfortunately, that is the way it's gone.
Yeah, and see, probably there's a bit of a pattern there as well, because, there probably are a lot of strong-willed and strong-minded presenters and so on, but there's also a lot of them that are really good in front of the camera, but in their own personal lives, maybe they can't deal with stuff and they can't manage it. And those snide comments and, the infringing on their privacy gets to them too much. So in that sense, the animal outside the TV studios becomes much bigger, and they can't live with it and they can't deal with it. And it's a shame the way it really spirals, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think maybe that's something, like, I know mental health has become such a big issue over the last couple of years, and I know myself, because I've struggled from anxiety, and I've excuse me, and I'm so glad that they're taking much more of people are recognizing it more. But I think hopefully with that, and with it being talked about more, and as I said, being recognized in schools and education and all that, that will be a strengthening for those who decide to go forward and go into social media, or into presenting. Because if you think about it, like, when I went to school and I only did my Leaving Cert in 2006, like, mental health, what? Like,
what's that? Yeah.
What's wrong with you? Get up, you're grand.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Whereas now they're getting the building blocks at an earlier age. So hopefully it'll be, if they decide to go down that route, and social media, or God knows whatever the future of, social media, or the next big thing is that they will have the building blocks and the kind of, tools to be able to deal with that and not hopefully, unfortunately, have other incidents like we've had with certain celebrities. Like,
Yeah. So, just staying for a little bit on that, like celebrity, without names, without mentioning anybody, like when you've been dealing with guests and even people you've been working around, and you get someone who's a diva or a guy or girl or whoever, but like that give you problems, what's your kind of strategy? How do you kind of diffuse that situation so you can all manage to work together?
you bite your tongue.
Okay.
No, look, I mean, it depends on the situation. Like, obviously, if situations arise and that somebody in the team is not being, or individually, or like, okay, you may have drama, you may have things, but you also have to remember you need to speak up for yourself. Like, there's no point in talking about all this kind of equality in the workplace and, standing up for women and girls sticking together and Me Too and all this if you don't stick up for yourself. So, you have to a certain point, and in a respectful way and in a professional way, make sure that your voice is heard as well, because that is important. There's no, like I said, no point in going on about all these campaigns if we actually, when it comes down to it, we don't do anything about it in our own lives. And I think with dealing with kind of individuals, like I said, if somebody is out of line, or you'll approach it and you'll do it in a respectful manner. Obviously, you're not going to go in all guns blazing, but you approach it, and you see what the situation is, and you try and find an equal level or an equal balance between both. Okay, and sometimes, then again, as well, you also have to take into account of whatever's happening. Like if something's happening in that person's life, or just like if it's out of character for one of your teams, think in your head, or your team members think in your head, okay, maybe there's something going on, or
maybe there's something you can't see.
You just have to, you have to assess the situation, because every situation is different, be it with people with big egos, be it with your team, be it with, the person that sits across from you, whatever. You don't know what's going on. So you need to evaluate each different situation.
Yeah. And, obviously, you worked in, I think it was like 7 years or so, you worked in TV3 and Virgin, wasn't it? 7 years or
Virgin,
around that?
Virgin Media, about 7.5 years.
Yeah. So the thing is, in that kind of time frame, do you feel that it's possible to work up the ladder, or is it very difficult, like to get, to say, okay, I'm working as a assistant producer and I want to be a producer? Are there many opportunities, or do you have to wait for somebody to leave?
It's doable. Yeah, no, it is doable. But again, it actually can come down to timing. Like you said, it can be, but as well, it's all about as well upping your skills. Like if you go in as a researcher, you go in and okay, you learn your line, you learn your position as a researcher, you learn your job inside out, you do it to the best of your ability. But you also look over your shoulder and be like, okay, well, what do I do if I'm an assistant producer? What's the difference? If you show initiative, if you show creativity in going forward, yeah, there definitely is a chance for you to progress. But again, timing is a big thing, and like I said, what's for you won't pass you by.
Yeah, and I can imagine in some roles there are producers that are there for years and years, and maybe there's like somebody coming up the ladder and they're like thinking, I'd love to do that job, but I have to go to another production company or another TV company. You have to kind of move around, don't you?
Yeah, you do. Like, I mean, like myself now, I'm in freelance. I'm gone back freelance now, and I'm dipping my toe in different things. And like I said, I'm gone from working on a all girl, very female dominant show to building houses and learning about joinery and slabbing.
Yeah.
And never, like I said, my dad would be proud. And I can do a few jobs now around the house. But
and you have a team you can call.
And I have a team I can call. Definitely. Yeah. If I need a carpenter or so. But yeah, like it's good to kind of dip your toe in different sections and different, but because through that as well, you'll find out what you want and you'll find out what you like. So what you might thought would have suited you, and as soon as you get in, you could hate it. So at least with the freelance world, sometimes you're only assigned to it for a certain time, and you could go, God, I'll never go near that again, or oh my God, I absolutely love that. So yeah.
And have you ever had aspirations to move into film production or to work, on movies or anything?
No, I like doing kind of VTs, like small video compilations, and I used to do that a lot in Elaine, especially around Halloween, or I would do little different types of pieces or different creative pieces. But film, no, I think I'm more better for the hour the hour show. Much more suited to that.
They'd be saying to you, it's a 3-hour documentary by Peter Jackson. You're like, no, I'll stick to the morning show or something.
Although never say never.
Never say never.
Never say never. If the right one came along, I would give it a
go. You know what's really interesting though, the fact, as you said, you're freelance now. It's more about the gigs that come along, isn't it? Because you could get a great offer for something that you might have never foreseen yourself doing. And in a year or two, look back and go, wow, I never thought I'd be doing this kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. Like, it's like there's so many more doors open to you. And it's great. Like, and you meet so many different people. And like, as well as they say, Ireland is a small country. So you will bump into people that you've worked with before, and or they'll know somebody that you know, and and that's great as well, because regarding your recommendations, and that's how you kind of build your profile and that kind of thing. But no, it's really, really good. So.
Looking back then, what's kind of been some of the highlights, or was there one main highlight so far in your career that you look back on fondly?
There's loads. Like, I did love my stint working on news. I did find it tough. I will admit that it was very tough. I did a really good piece in, excuse me, for Halloween, which I went over to Salem, and I did a whole piece looking at the connection between Ireland and the Salem witch trials. So I got over there. I got over to Salem in Massachusetts, which was amazing.
Considering you love the paranormal.
Oh my God, it was amazing. Absolutely amazing. Yeah. Like a trip in a lifetime, definitely. And I had my presenter there with me, he's an amazing presenter, Sarah Cleary. So she knew her stuff, which was great. The history and the connections, and it was amazing. Really, really good. And then, I did other things like my Throwback Tuesdays. I'm a huge 90s girl. I'm a huge music fan. And so to interview some of like the people who I had on my wall when I was a kid.
Yeah. I saw Young and those,
Scott and Five, and I was like, oh my God, I'm talking to him. Like, okay, talk about fangirl moments completely over the last, couple of the year I had covered that for. And then as well, I did a really good VT with Mary Byrne, where we taught her took her out of her comfort zone and taught her how to do burlesque dancing. So I put on a whole show in the George, and she did her piece, and with Santina Lowe, and that did really well. So yeah, I've so many, and DIY SOS as well as a different, completely mix up from being in the same kind of position with producing Elaine over the 7 years, and then changing to something that was completely different. Was a nice little shake up as well, and one to definitely remember with the transition.
Yeah, and the question I have for you there, obviously because you're freelance now, does the work, like, do you have to look for work in different ways, or do people contact you and say, look, this is happening 6 months down the line, or are you hunting for things?
It's a bit of both, really. You just keep on the lookout, you keep in with your contacts, you just keep scouring and keep trawling and keep going for things. Yeah.
Keep hustling.
Keep hustling. That's it. Yeah,
well, listen, Sinead, it's been lovely talking to you, and thanks for giving us some insights into your world and your past world and your current world. And have you any other projects beyond that you're working on that you can tell us about, or is everything a secret?
I have a few in the pipeline, but sure, look, listen, I'm on Instagram and Facebook. You'll find out soon enough on that.
We'll keep track of that. But listen, thanks for coming on the show. It's been lovely to speak to you.
No problem.
And, you're welcome anytime. And best of luck with everything in the next year or so.
Yeah, thanks a million for having me on.
Very good. Sinead Dalton, everyone. Thanks a lot, Sinead. Okay, thank you very much, Sinead. That was really interesting listening to you and everything that goes into the work of being a TV producer and all it entails. So thank you very much for your stories and some wonderful anecdotes there of life behind the camera. That was Sinead Dalton. I hope you enjoyed that interview, and I hope you keep coming back for more great content and great guests on this show, the Collective Whisper podcast with me, Simon Kay. So until the next time, look after yourself, look after your family, and take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.